Welcome to Nightfall Horror 002. Step into terrifying, true-style stories and subscribe now for more chilling tales. I never planned on stopping that night. 2 years ago, I was driving from New York to Tennessee to visit an old college friend. Long drives never bothered me. In fact, I preferred them. Hours alone on the road gave me time to think, listen to podcasts, and escape from everything waiting back home. By midnight, however, reality started winning. My eyelids felt heavy. The white highway lines blurred together. Every road sign looked the same. At 1:07 a.m., I saw a blue exit sign. Gas station, diner, motel. Nothing else. The exit looked forgotten by time. A thin fog hung over the road as I pulled into the parking lot of an aging roadside motel called the Briarwood Lodge. Half the neon sign was burned out, leaving only the word wood glowing weakly in the darkness. Only 3 cars sat in the entire lot. The place looked abandoned. I almost drove away. Almost. But exhaustion makes terrible decisions seem reasonable. Inside the office, thick bulletproof glass separated guests from the front desk clerk. The man behind it appeared to be in his late 50s. His eyes looked tired, almost nervous. When I handed him my credit card, he barely looked at me. Then something strange happened. Before giving me my key, he asked a question. "Traveling alone?" I nodded. His fingers froze above the keyboard for a moment. Then he forced a smile. "Just one night?" "Yeah." He slid the key card under the glass. Room 214, second floor, far corner. As I turned to leave, he suddenly spoke again. "Keep your curtains closed." I stopped. "What?" The man quickly shook his head. "Nothing, just motel policy." Motel policy? I had never heard that before. Still, I was too tired to care. Outside, the wind had picked up. The wooden balcony creaked beneath my feet as I walked toward room 214. Every room faced the parking lot. Every window stared into darkness. When I reached my door, I noticed something odd. Room 216, the room directly beside mine, had newspapers taped over the entire window from the inside. Not curtains, newspapers. Dozens of them, as if someone desperately wanted to block every inch of light. I stared for several seconds before finally entering my room. The air inside felt damp. The wallpaper peeled near the ceiling. The AC rattled like loose chains. But a bed was a bed. I locked the door, closed the blinds, took a quick shower, then collapsed onto the mattress. For about 20 minutes, everything was quiet. Then I heard voices coming from room 216. At first, it sounded like an argument, a man and a woman fighting, muffled shouting, accusations, anger. But the longer I listened, the stranger it became. The voices never overlapped, not once. Every response came at the exact perfect moment, like lines from a script. And then something unsettling dawned on me. It wasn't 2 people. It was one. One man performing both sides of the conversation. A deep male voice, then a higher feminine voice, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, for nearly 20 minutes. I sat motionless on the bed, the TV volume lowered. The room suddenly felt colder. Then the voices stopped. Silence filled the motel. A full minute passed, maybe 2. Then, knock. A single knock came through the wall beside my bed. I froze. Another knock, this time slower, deliberate. "I know you're awake." Every hair on my arm stood up. The voice came through the wall, directly beside my head. Then came another knock, this time slower, deliberate. "I heard you checking in." My stomach dropped. I hadn't made a sound. I stared at the wall, too scared to move. Then the voice laughed, a quiet laugh, the kind that sounds rehearsed, like someone practicing. And that's when I heard something else. A motel room door opening outside, slowly, very slowly, followed by footsteps coming toward my room. The footsteps moved steadily across the second-floor balcony, slow, measured, unhurried. Every creak of the old wooden walkway sounded louder than it should have in the middle of the night. I remained frozen beside the bed. The room suddenly felt much smaller. The footsteps stopped, right outside my door. Silence. No knocking, no voices, nothing. For several seconds, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe the guest from room 216 was simply heading to the vending machine or taking a late-night walk. Then I heard something that destroyed that explanation. A faint, scraping sound. Glass. Someone was touching my window. My heart started hammering against my ribs. The motel curtains were completely shut, except for a narrow gap where they didn't fully meet the wall. From where I stood, I could see a thin line of darkness through that opening. I told myself not to look. Every instinct screamed at me to stay away from the window. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. Slowly, I stepped closer, one careful step at a time. The floorboards groaned beneath my feet. I reached the curtain. My hand trembled as I pulled the fabric aside, barely half an inch. The second I looked out, I nearly stumbled backward. A face was inches from the glass, a man's face. His eyes were wide open, unnaturally wide, like he hadn't blinked in minutes. For one horrifying second, our eyes locked. Then he smiled. Not a normal smile, not friendly, not threatening, just wrong. The kind of smile that had no emotion behind it, the kind that looked practiced. I jerked away from the window. Outside, the man immediately began speaking, except he wasn't speaking in his normal voice. He switched into a childish voice, then an elderly woman's voice, then a southern accent, then a deep growling tone, one after another, like an actor performing multiple characters or someone practicing for an audience that wasn't there. The voices grew louder, closer. Then came the knocking, this time on my door. 3 sharp knocks, then another voice. "Housekeeping?" A different voice. "We know you're in there." Another. "Open the door." Then laughter, more laughter, different voices, all coming from the same person. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the motel phone. I immediately called the front office. The clerk answered after 2 rings. At first, he sounded annoyed. Then I held the phone toward the door. The knocking echoed through the receiver. The voices continued. The clerk instantly went silent. For several seconds, he didn't say anything. Then his tone completely changed. "I'm coming up." The line disconnected. Outside, the voices continued for another minute. Then everything stopped, abruptly, like someone had flipped a switch. I cautiously approached the peephole. The hallway outside appeared empty.
Then movement. The man walked quickly past my door, his head lowered, his hands stuffed into his coat. He disappeared into room 216. A few moments later, the motel clerk arrived carrying a flashlight. What caught my attention wasn't the flashlight, it was the revolver on his hip. The clerk marched directly to room 216. He knocked. No response. He knocked harder. Still nothing. The room remained completely silent, as though nobody had ever been inside. After nearly a minute, the clerk approached my room. I opened the door just enough to speak. His face looked pale, tired, concerned. When I explained everything, he listened carefully. Then I asked the obvious question, "Who is that guy?" The clerk hesitated. His eyes shifted toward room 216. For several seconds, he seemed to debate whether to answer. Finally, he sighed. "He's been staying here for months." "Months?" I repeated. The clerk nodded. "He pays cash." "What's his name?" Another pause. Then the clerk quietly replied, "I don't know." I stared at him. Surely that wasn't possible. But judging by his expression, he wasn't joking. The clerk offered to move me downstairs, closer to the office. I accepted immediately. Within 10 minutes, I packed my belongings and followed him to room 103 near the parking lot. As we walked downstairs, I glanced up toward the second floor, toward room 216. The curtains had moved, just slightly. Someone was watching us. I could feel it. The clerk unlocked my new room. Before leaving, he stopped in the doorway. There was something he wanted to say. I could see it. Finally, he leaned closer and whispered, "Lock the door." I laughed nervously, obviously, but he didn't smile. Instead, he looked directly into my eyes and said, "No, you don't understand." Then he lowered his voice even further. "You're not the first guest he followed." The clerk turned and walked away before I could ask another question. I locked the door, checked it twice, then pushed a chair beneath the handle. For the next hour, I sat awake, staring at the window, listening, waiting, hoping the night would end. Eventually, exhaustion won. My eyes closed, and sometime later, a sound woke me. A slow crunch of gravel outside my room, followed by footsteps. Again.
The footsteps moved across the gravel outside my room. Slow, deliberate. Crunch, crunch, crunch. For a few seconds, I stayed perfectly still in bed, hoping whoever it was would simply keep walking. The footsteps stopped, directly outside my window. My eyes immediately locked onto the narrow opening between the curtains. A dark shadow stood there, motionless, watching. Every muscle in my body tightened. I reached for my phone and checked the time. 3:18 a.m. The motel room was silent, except for the pounding of my heart. The shadow didn't move, not an inch. I carefully slid out of bed and crouched beside the wall where I couldn't easily be seen from outside. Minutes passed. 5, maybe 10. The figure remained there, standing, waiting, watching. Then, suddenly, it began moving. The shadow slowly crossed the window, disappeared. A few moments later, it returned, passing the room again, then again, and again, like someone pacing, patrolling, or looking for an opportunity. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. Keeping low, I crawled toward the curtain and peeked through the gap. My stomach dropped. It was him, the same man from room 216.
but something was different now. Earlier, he'd seemed theatrical, almost playful in a disturbing way. Now, he looked completely calm, expressionless. He walked past my room, reached the edge of the parking lot, turned around, then walked back. Every time he passed, his eyes drifted toward my window, never looking away for long. I counted 6 passes, then 7, then 8. He wasn't lost. He wasn't exercising. He was watching. At some point, he disappeared behind the motel building. I waited. 10 minutes, 20, nothing. The rest of the night passed without incident, but I never slept again. The moment the first traces of sunrise appeared on the horizon, I packed everything into my car. I didn't bother checking out. I didn't return the key card. I just wanted to leave. As I loaded my bag into the trunk, I noticed the front office lights were already on. The clerk stood outside smoking a cigarette. When he saw me, he gave a small nod, almost like he expected me to leave early. I walked over. "Does that guy still stay here?" The clerk exhaled smoke and stared toward the second floor. "No." I frowned. "What do you mean, no?" The clerk looked confused. "The room's empty." I felt my stomach tighten. "Room 216? Been empty for 3 days." I stared at him. "That's impossible." The clerk's expression slowly changed. "What are you talking about?" For the next minute, I explained everything again. The voices, the knocking, the man outside my window, the pacing in the parking lot. The clerk listened silently. When he finished, his face had gone completely pale. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Last night was my first shift back." "What?" "The guy who usually works nights quit 3 days ago." A cold feeling spread in my chest. "Why?" The clerk hesitated, then shook his head. He wouldn't tell anybody. The conversation ended there. I left the motel feeling unsettled, but relieved to finally be gone. Or at least I thought I was gone. About 4 hours later, I stopped at a gas station somewhere in Western Virginia. I filled up my tank, grabbed coffee, and got back on the road. As I pulled out of the station, I glanced into my rearview mirror. A black SUV sat across the street. The driver was staring directly at me. Even from that distance, I recognized the face immediately. The man from the motel. My pulse spiked. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it wasn't him. I accelerated onto the highway. A few moments later, the SUV pulled out too and followed. For the next 20 miles, every lane change I made, he made. Every exit I passed, he passed. The distance between us never changed. Eventually, I convinced myself I was being paranoid until my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. There was only silence. Then, in a soft female voice, someone whispered, "You're driving too fast." My blood turned to ice because nobody should have known that. The road ahead was empty, and somehow the voice sounded exactly like the one I had heard through the wall in room 216.
The moment I heard that whisper, I nearly dropped my phone. "You're driving too fast." The voice sounded female, soft, calm, almost caring, but I knew better. I had heard that exact voice before, through the wall of room 216. The same unnatural tone, the same forced imitation, the same voice that belonged to the man at the motel. I looked into my rearview mirror. The black SUV was still there, maintaining the same distance, never getting closer, never falling behind. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "Who is this?" I demanded. Silence. Then another voice answered, a deep male voice, the same man. "Keep driving." The line disconnected. For several seconds I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I immediately tried calling the number back. No answer. The call went straight to voicemail. A robotic message informed me the number was no longer in service. That made absolutely no sense. I had just spoken to someone. I exited the highway at the next town I saw. A busy place, gas stations, restaurants, people. I wanted witnesses around me. The SUV followed, at least until I pulled into a crowded shopping center. Then something strange happened. The SUV kept going. It never turned, never slowed down. It simply continued down the road and disappeared. I sat in my car for nearly 15 minutes trying to calm down. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe someone had played a prank. Maybe none of this was connected. But deep down, I knew it was. Eventually, I continued toward Tennessee. The rest of the drive passed without incident. By late afternoon, I arrived at my friend Ethan's house just outside Nashville. I didn't tell him everything, only that I had stayed at a creepy motel and met a strange guy. Ethan laughed. Sounds like every motel in America. I laughed too. At least I tried. For the next few days, things felt normal again. We went fishing, watched football, visited old college friends. The motel slowly faded into the background of my mind. Until the fourth night. Around midnight, Ethan and I were sitting in his living room watching a movie. His phone suddenly buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then frowned. That's weird. What? It's for you. I stared at him. What do you mean it's for me? He turned the phone around. Unknown number. I felt my stomach drop. Answer it, I said. Ethan shrugged and picked up. Hello? Nothing. A few seconds passed. Then Ethan's expression changed. His face lost all color. Slowly, he lowered the phone from his ear. What? I asked. He didn't answer. What did they say? Ethan swallowed, then looked directly at me. They asked if you were sleeping upstairs. Every hair on my body stood up because there was no upstairs. Ethan lived in a one-story house. The caller couldn't have known that, unless they weren't actually asking, unless they already knew. We immediately called the number back, disconnected, just like before. That night, I barely slept. The following morning, I finally told Ethan the entire story. Everything. The motel, the voices, the man outside the window, the phone calls, the SUV. When I finished, Ethan didn't laugh. Instead, he walked to his laptop. What motel was it? I told him. He searched for it online. At first, nothing unusual appeared, just reviews, photos, directions. Then Ethan found an old local news article from several years earlier. The headline instantly caught our attention. Local man missing after checking into roadside motel. We opened the article. A traveler had disappeared while driving through Virginia. His car was found abandoned near the motel. His belongings remained in his room, but he was never seen again. No suspects, no evidence, no answers. I felt cold reading it. Then Ethan scrolled further down. There was a photograph attached to the article, a grainy security camera image. The picture showed the motel parking lot, several vehicles, a few guests, and standing near the stairwell, a man wearing a long, dark coat, his face blurry but unmistakable. Even after all those years, the same man, the same smile, the same eyes. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Then Ethan zoomed in on the image and noticed something neither of us had seen before: the timestamp. The photo had been taken 6 years earlier, yet the man looked exactly the same. Not older, not younger, exactly the same, as if time had never touched him. And then, before either of us could say anything else, someone knocked on Ethan's front door. 3 slow knocks, the exact same rhythm I had heard through the wall at room 216. Knock, knock, knock.
The knocking came again. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, patient, deliberate. Neither Ethan nor I moved. The living room suddenly felt frozen in time. Outside, the Tennessee night was silent. No passing cars, no barking dogs, nothing. Just those 3 knocks. Ethan looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us wanted to answer that door. Another 30 seconds passed. Then the knocking returned. Exactly the same pattern. Knock, knock, knock. My pulse hammered inside my ears. Finally, Ethan stood up and grabbed the baseball bat he kept near the fireplace. "Stay here," he whispered. "No chance," I replied. We both moved toward the front hallway. The porch light outside cast a faint yellow glow through the frosted glass beside the door. A silhouette stood outside, motionless, waiting. I felt my stomach twist. The figure looked tall, broad-shouldered, wearing some kind of long coat. Ethan slowly approached the peephole. The second he looked through it, his entire body froze. His face lost all color. "What is it?" I whispered. He didn't answer. "What do you see?" Still nothing. Finally, Ethan stepped backward, slowly, like he'd just seen something impossible. "There's nobody there." The words made no sense. We could clearly see a shadow through the glass. Someone was standing outside. I pushed past him and looked through the peephole myself. Nothing. The porch was completely empty. No person, no movement, no vehicle, nothing. Yet the shadow remained visible through the side glass, standing perfectly still. My chest tightened. Then the shadow moved, not outside, inside. The dark shape slowly slid across the hallway wall behind us. Both of us turned instantly. The hallway was empty, but the shadow had been there. I know what I saw. For several terrifying seconds, neither of us spoke. Then the knocking stopped completely. The silence afterward felt even worse. Ethan eventually opened the front door. Nobody. The yard was empty. The driveway was empty. No footprints, no vehicle, nothing. It was as if whoever had knocked simply vanished. We locked every door and window in the house. Neither of us slept much that night. The next morning, we decided to dig deeper. Something about the motel wasn't right, and the man in the photograph definitely wasn't normal. After breakfast, Ethan contacted a friend of his who worked at a local newspaper. By late afternoon, we were on a video call with a retired journalist named Michael Hayes. The moment we mentioned the motel's name, his expression changed. "You stayed there?" "Yeah." Michael sighed heavily. Then he disappeared from camera for a moment. When he returned, he was carrying a thick folder. Yellowed papers spilled out from the sides. "Most people don't know this," he said, "but that motel has been connected to multiple disappearances over the last 20 years. My mouth went dry. "How many?" Michael flipped through several pages. "Officially, 4. Unofficially?" He hesitated, then quietly replied, "Closer to 12. The room fell silent. Michael explained that almost every disappearance followed a similar pattern. A traveler, alone, passing through, stops for one night,
never seen again. Some left behind cars, some left behind luggage. One left behind his wallet, passport, and cell phone, almost as if they vanished into thin air. Then Michael showed us something else, an old newspaper clipping from 2008. The photo quality was terrible, but I immediately recognized the man standing beside the motel office. The same coat, the same face, the same expression, exactly the same, not a single difference. Michael leaned closer to the camera. We could never identify him. "Who is he?" Ethan asked. Michael slowly shook his head. "No idea." Then he said something that neither of us expected. "The strange thing is," he flipped to another photograph. This one, dated 1999. I felt my blood turn cold. The same man appeared again, 23 years earlier, looking exactly the same. Not older, not younger, identical. The room became completely silent. Then Michael spoke the words that would change everything. "You're not the first person to report hearing multiple voices." A chill ran through my body. "What do you mean?" Michael stared directly into the camera. Every witness described the same thing. He paused, then continued. "A man who could imitate anybody." At that exact moment, my phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. My heart nearly stopped. Both Ethan and Michael stared at the screen. The call continued ringing. Nobody moved. Finally, with shaking hands, I answered. Silence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then a familiar voice whispered, "I found you." The line disconnected, and a second later, a text message arrived. The message contained only an address, a motel in Oklahoma, and somehow, before opening the map, I already knew exactly where part 6 of this nightmare was going to begin.
I almost stopped the video here, because what appears next isn't human. Nahid Hassan kept saying one thing. It's standing behind me. If you're still subscribe to Nightfall Series 2.
I should have ignored the message, deleted it, blocked the number, gone home. That would have been the smart thing to do. Instead, 3 days later, Ethan and I were driving west toward Oklahoma. The address from the text message kept bothering me. It wasn't just an address, it felt like an invitation, or maybe a trap. Either way, I needed answers. The location led us to a small roadside motel outside a rural town several miles from the nearest city. The place looked surprisingly ordinary. Nothing about it screamed danger. No broken signs, no creepy atmosphere, just a 2-story motel sitting beside a highway. But the moment we parked, a strange feeling settled over me, like I had been there before, even though I knew I hadn't. The motel office sat near the entrance. As Ethan and I walked inside, a young woman behind the desk greeted us. She looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept properly in days. We asked for a room. She handed us 2 key cards. Then, without warning, she leaned forward. "Don't tell anyone your room number." Ethan and I exchanged a glance. The statement immediately reminded me of the Virginia motel. "Why?" Ethan asked. The woman hesitated, then forced a smile. "Just a safety habit." It sounded rehearsed, like she'd said it many times before. We checked in to room 208, second floor, near the middle of the building. The room itself was normal, clean, quiet, nothing unusual, at least at first. That evening, we grabbed food from a nearby pizza place and returned around 10:30 p.m. The motel seemed almost empty. Only a handful of cars sat in the parking lot. As we entered the lobby, I noticed someone sitting alone in a dark corner near an old television. A man wearing a black sweater, black pants, his face partially hidden in shadow. Something about him felt familiar. He wasn't watching TV. He wasn't on his phone. He was simply sitting there, watching people. The second our eyes met, he looked away. A small detail, but enough to make me uncomfortable. Back in our room, Ethan brushed it off. Probably another traveler. Maybe, but my instincts disagreed. Around 1:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. Only 4 words. "Look out the window." My heart immediately started racing. Ethan saw the message. Neither of us wanted to look, but eventually we did. Carefully, slowly, through a narrow gap in the curtains. The parking lot below was almost empty. A few parked vehicles, a flickering streetlight. Nothing unusual. Then I noticed movement near the far edge of the property. A woman stood beside a vending machine, motionless, watching our room, her face hidden beneath a hood. For several seconds, she didn't move. Then she slowly raised one arm and pointed, not at us, at the room directly beside ours, room 209, a room that appeared empty when we arrived. The hallway outside suddenly echoed with a door opening. We turned toward the sound, then heard footsteps, someone entering room 209, a room that moments earlier should have been vacant. Ethan looked back toward the parking lot. The hooded woman was gone, vanished, as if she'd never been there. The motel suddenly felt a lot less ordinary, and neither of us realized it yet, but room 209 was about to connect us to a terrifying story that had started months before our arrival. A story involving a family who checked into this same motel during a spring break road trip and barely escaped with their lives.
The next morning, Ethan and I went straight to the motel office. Neither of us mentioned the hooded woman. At that point, we weren't even sure she'd been real. But room 209 was another matter. When we casually asked about it, the receptionist's expression changed. Only for a second, but we noticed. "Is someone staying there?" Ethan asked. The woman hesitated, then nodded. "A guest checked in yesterday." That answer should have settled things. Instead, it created more questions. Because when we had arrived, the room looked completely abandoned. No luggage, no lights, no vehicle parked outside, nothing. Later that afternoon, we decided to explore the town. A few miles away, we found a small diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. The food was decent, the coffee was terrible, but the owner was friendly. And after some careful conversation, we learned something interesting. The motel had a reputation. Locals avoided it, not because of crime, not because of drugs, because of stories, disappearances, strange guests, people leaving in the middle of the night. The diner owner eventually told us about one particular incident, a family, 5 women traveling together during spring break, a grandmother, a mother, and 3 daughters. The story immediately caught my attention. According to him, they had checked into the motel roughly 4 years earlier. Everything seemed normal at first, until one of the daughters noticed a man standing in the lobby, just standing there, watching, not checking in, not talking, just watching. The diner owner didn't know all the details, but he remembered what happened afterward. The family left abruptly around midnight. They never slept there, never stayed the night.
They simply packed everything and drove away, fast, scared, desperate. The way he described it sounded less like travelers changing plans and more like people escaping something. Back at the motel that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The timeline matched, the behavior matched, and most importantly, the description of the man matched. A quiet observer, always watching, always listening, always appearing where he shouldn't be. Around 10 p.m., Ethan and I sat inside our room reviewing everything we learned. Then we heard movement outside. Footsteps, several sets, not one person, multiple people. The sound stopped near room 209. We exchanged a glance. Slowly, Ethan moved toward the peephole. "What do you see?" I whispered. He stared for several seconds, then frowned. 3 guys. My stomach tightened. What are they doing? Just standing there. I walked over and looked myself. 3 men stood outside room 209. None of them spoke. None of them knocked. They simply stood in the hallway, waiting. A minute passed, then 2, then 3. Finally, the door of room 209 opened. A woman stepped outside, middle-aged, dark hair, nervous expression. The second she saw the 3 men, she froze. The men didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. The woman slowly backed into the room and shut the door. The hallway remained silent. Then one of the men lifted his hand and knocked. 3 slow knocks, the same rhythm, always the same rhythm. My chest tightened because I knew that pattern. I had heard it in Virginia, at Ethan's house, and now here. The woman never answered. After another minute, the men walked away. Their footsteps faded down the staircase. The hallway became quiet again. For nearly 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I stared at the screen. The now familiar fear returned instantly. A text message appeared. "Help her." That was all. No explanation, no name, no context, just 2 words. Help her. Ethan read the message over my shoulder. Neither of us spoke, because deep down, we both knew exactly who the text was referring to, the woman in room 209. And moments later, as if confirming our fears, a loud crash echoed from somewhere downstairs, followed by a woman's scream.
The scream cut through the motel like a knife. Sharp, terrified, desperate. Ethan and I were already moving before either of us said a word. We threw open the door and rushed into the hallway. Other guests began peeking out of their rooms, confused, half asleep. The scream had come from the first floor, near the rear parking lot. We raced down the stairs 2 steps at a time. The moment we reached the bottom, we saw her, the woman from room 209. She stood near the ice machine, breathing heavily, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Several people had gathered around her. A motel employee was trying to calm her down. "What happened?" Ethan asked. The woman looked around nervously before answering. "There was somebody in my room." The crowd immediately fell silent. The employee frowned. "Did they steal anything?" The woman shook her head. "No." "Then what were they doing?" The answer sent chills through everyone listening. "They were standing beside my bed." A wave of silence swept across the group. The woman continued, "I woke up and saw someone standing in the dark." Her voice trembled. "Just standing there, looking at me." I felt my stomach drop, because it sounded exactly like something the man from Virginia would do. The motel employee immediately checked the room. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no broken window,
No damaged lock, nothing. It was as if the intruder had simply vanished. The woman refused to return to the room. Instead, she packed her belongings and checked out immediately. By 2 a.m., she was gone. The entire incident left the motel shaken, but something bothered me. The timing, the 3 men outside her room, the text message, the scream. It felt connected, like someone had known exactly what was about to happen. Back in our room, neither Ethan or I could sleep. Around 3 a.m., I heard something outside, a faint metallic sound, almost like someone rattling car door handles. At first, I thought I imagined it. Then I heard it again. Click, click, click. The sound was coming from the parking lot. We carefully looked through the curtain. A man stood among the parked vehicles, moving from car to car, testing doors, peering through windows, exactly like someone searching for something or someone. The parking lot lights barely illuminated him, but I could tell he wasn't one of the 3 men from earlier. This was someone else, a 4th person. He stopped beside a black SUV, pressed his face against the glass, then suddenly turned toward the motel, toward our room. Even from that distance, I felt my chest tighten, because he wasn't looking randomly. He was looking directly at us, as if he knew we were watching. Seconds later, another figure appeared near the motel entrance, then another. 3 people, now 4, standing together, talking, occasionally glancing toward the building, toward room 209, toward our room, toward the guests. The atmosphere changed instantly. This wasn't random anymore. Something was happening, and everyone seemed to know it except us. Then Ethan noticed something. One of the men wore a long, dark coat. My blood turned cold. Even from a distance, I recognized it. The same coat from Virginia, the same coat from the old newspaper photos, the same coat from every story. The man slowly turned, and for the first time, the parking lot light illuminated his face. It was him. Exactly him. Not older, not younger. Exactly the same. Standing hundreds of miles away from where I had first seen him. Watching, waiting, smiling. Then all 4 men walked toward the motel office. The door opened. They entered and disappeared inside. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nobody came back out. Finally, Ethan and I decided to investigate. We quietly left our room and crossed the parking lot. The office lights were still on, but when we looked through the glass door, the room was empty. No receptionist, no guests, no 4 men, nobody. The office was completely vacant. Then we noticed something unusual. Behind the front desk sat an old guest registration book, open, as if someone had been reading it moments earlier. Ethan stepped inside. I followed. The book was open to a page dated 4 years earlier, the year of the spring break incident, and written across one margin in shaky handwriting were 5 words. They almost took the girls. Suddenly, a voice spoke behind us. Quiet, soft, too close. You're looking at the wrong story. We spun around, but the office was empty. Nobody stood behind us, yet the voice was real, and somehow it sounded exactly like the woman who had pointed at room 209 from the parking lot. The hooded woman, the one who had disappeared.
Ethan and I stood frozen inside the empty motel office. The voice had been right behind us, close enough that I should have felt someone's breath. Yet there was nobody there. The office remained completely empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The The guest registry sat open on the desk, and suddenly neither of us wanted to be there anymore. We hurried back to our room and locked the door. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "That woman!" I nodded. We were thinking the same thing. The hooded woman, the one who had pointed toward room 209, the one whose voice we had just heard. Who was she, and why did she seem connected to everything? The next morning, we started asking questions. Most people in town refused to talk. Some acted uncomfortable the moment we mentioned the motel. Others simply changed the subject. But eventually we found someone willing to speak, an elderly mechanic who had lived in the area for decades. The moment we described the hooded woman, his expression changed. "You saw her?" That answer immediately got our attention. "You know who she is?" Ethan asked. The old man sighed, then slowly nodded. "People call her the Watcher." The name sent a chill through me. According to him, reports of the woman went back years. Nobody knew her real identity. Nobody knew where she lived, but travelers occasionally reported seeing her around the motel, always at night, always watching, always appearing shortly before something bad happened. Sometimes she seemed to warn people, sometimes she simply observed, and every witness described the same thing: a dark hood, a silent stare, then disappearance, as if she was never there at all. The mechanic leaned closer. "What you should be worried about isn't her." "Then what?" His eyes darkened. "The men." My stomach tightened. "What men?" The old man looked toward the highway, toward the motel, then quietly answered, "The ones looking for people." A cold feeling settled over me, because suddenly everything started fitting together. The travelers, the disappearances, the families who fled, the strangers watching rooms, the men in parking lots. The old mechanic continued, "For years, folks around here whispered about a group." "A group?" He nodded. "They move from motel to motel." "Doing what?" The mechanic hesitated, then quietly replied, "Finding vulnerable people." The words hung heavily in the air. Nobody knew exactly what happened after that, only that some travelers vanished, others escaped, and a few reported being watched for hours before leaving. Then he said something unexpected. "The man in the coat isn't their leader." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" The mechanic looked directly at me. "He's their scout." The statement chilled me more than anything else I had heard, because I had spent months believing the man was acting alone. But what if he wasn't? What if there were others? The mechanic pointed toward the motel. "That man has been spotted all over the country. Virginia, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas. Always near highways, always near motels, always watching. The same face, the same smile, the same coat." Then the mechanic said something that made my blood run cold. "My brother saw him 20 years ago." 20 years, and he still looked the same. The realization settled heavily between us. The mechanic eventually handed us a folded newspaper clipping. The article described an incident from 2018. A family had checked into the motel. 3 daughters, a grandmother, a mother. Almost immediately, they noticed strange men watching them, listening, following. The family left before sunrise, exactly like the story we'd heard, exactly like the warning written inside the guest registry. They almost took the girls. Suddenly, everything made sense. That warning hadn't been random. It had been left by someone who survived, someone trying to warn future travelers, someone like the hooded woman. That night, Ethan and I returned to the motel one final time. We wanted answers, real answers.
The parking lot looked unusually crowded. Several unfamiliar vehicles sat near the back. People moved quietly between rooms, watching, waiting. The atmosphere felt wrong, dangerous. Around midnight, I noticed something. The hooded woman stood near the edge of the property again, watching us. This time she didn't point, she simply stared, then slowly raised one finger toward the road, as if telling us to leave immediately, before it was too late. Then she vanished into the darkness once more, and moments later, every light in the motel suddenly went out. The entire property plunged into darkness. At the exact same moment, dozens of footsteps began moving outside, coming from every direction.
The entire motel went dark. 1 second, the parking lot was lit by old yellow lamps. The next, everything disappeared into blackness. Not dim, not partially dark, completely dark. For a brief moment, silence covered the property. Then came the footsteps, dozens of them, moving across gravel, across concrete walkways, up staircases, down hallways, every direction at once. Ethan immediately grabbed his phone and switched on the flashlight. The beam barely cut through the darkness. Outside our room, shadows moved, fast, purposeful. Not guests searching for the breaker box, not confused travelers. These people knew exactly where they were going, and that terrified me, because it felt planned. The motel suddenly resembled a hunting ground. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Again. I answered without thinking. For several seconds, only static filled the speaker. Then the familiar female voice whispered, "Leave now." The call disconnected. No explanation, no warning beyond those 2 words, "Leave now." Ethan had already reached the same conclusion. We need to go. I nodded immediately. We grabbed our bags and headed for the door. The hallway outside was pitch black. Only scattered phone flashlights flickered in the distance. As we moved toward the staircase, we heard voices below. Several men, talking quietly. The words were impossible to make out, but the tone wasn't. They sounded organized, coordinated, like people searching for something, or someone. We avoided the main stairs and took the emergency exit at the rear of the building. The moment we stepped outside, cold air hit our faces. The parking lot was chaos. Guests stood outside rooms. Some looked confused, others looked frightened. Several vehicles were already leaving, their headlights slicing through the darkness. Then I saw him, the man in the coat, standing near the office, watching. Even from a distance, I could see the smile, that same smile, unchanging, patient, almost amused. For a second, his eyes locked onto mine, and I felt something I had never felt before. Recognition. Not from my side, from his, as if he already knew exactly who I was, as if he'd known from the beginning. Ethan grabbed my arm. Move. We hurried toward the car. Halfway there, movement caught my attention. 3 men stepped between 2 parked trucks, the same 3 we'd seen outside room 209. They weren't running, they weren't chasing, they simply watched us, the way predators watch prey, waiting, calculating. Another group appeared near the motel entrance, then another. More people than there should have been at a nearly empty roadside motel. Far more. The realization hit me hard. The motel wasn't just attracting these people, it was connected to them. The whole place felt like a meeting point, a crossroads, a trap. We reached the car and jumped inside. The engine started immediately, thank God. As we pulled toward the exit, I glanced one last time toward the property and saw something I'll never forget. The hooded woman stood near the road, perfectly still, watching us leave. For the first time, I could partially see her face beneath the hood.
She looked young, much younger than I expected, maybe early 30s. Her expression wasn't frightening. It was sad, like someone carrying a burden for years. Then she slowly nodded, as if confirming we'd made the right choice, and disappeared back into the darkness. We drove until sunrise. Neither of us spoke much. By morning, we had crossed into Arkansas. The motel felt far behind us, but the questions remained. Who was the woman? Who were the men? And why had they been gathering there? Around noon, Ethan's phone rang. It was the mechanic from Oklahoma. The moment he spoke, I knew something was wrong. They know you've been asking questions. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? The mechanic sounded nervous. I shouldn't even be calling. Calling about what? A long pause followed. Then he quietly answered, the Texas case. Ethan and I exchanged a glance. Texas? The mechanic inhaled slowly. You think Oklahoma is where this story started? Silence. Then, no. It started with a family from Texas. A family. 3 daughters, a grandmother, a mother. The same family that escaped years ago. And according to the mechanic, one of those daughters had spent years investigating what happened afterwards, years tracking sightings, years collecting reports, years searching for the man in the coat. And recently, she had disappeared. The last place anyone traced her to was a motel outside Branson, Missouri, the same route her family had traveled years earlier, the same route we were about to follow. Because whether we liked it or not, the next chapter of this nightmare was waiting in Missouri.
I almost stopped the video here, because what appears next isn't human. Nahid Hassan kept saying one thing. It's standing behind me. If you're still watching, subscribe to Nightfall 002.
Three days after leaving Oklahoma, Ethan and I arrived in Missouri. Neither of us wanted to continue, but curiosity had evolved into something else: responsibility. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being about a creepy motel. People were disappearing. And if the mechanic was telling the truth, one of them had spent years trying to expose whatever was happening. The least we could do was find out what she discovered. The missing woman's name was Alyssa Walker. At least that was the name used in police reports. 22 years old, college student, originally from Central Texas. 4 years earlier, she had been one of the daughters involved in the motel incident during spring break. The family escaped, but Alyssa never forgot. According to the files we gathered, she spent years documenting reports from travelers across multiple states: Virginia, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee. The same locations we kept encountering, the same stories, the same man, the same coat, the same pattern. Eventually, her investigation led her back to Missouri. Then she vanished. Her car was later discovered behind an abandoned motel outside Branson. Her phone, wallet, laptop, everything remained inside, except Alyssa. The case quickly went cold. No suspects, no evidence, no answers. Late that afternoon, Ethan and I drove to the abandoned motel. The property sat several miles off the highway, surrounded by dense woods. The motel itself looked dead, windows boarded, doors hanging crooked, nature slowly reclaiming the building. Yet something about the place felt familiar, too familiar. The layout resembled both motels we'd already visited. Same style, same architecture, same long outdoor hallways. as if they had all been built from the same blueprint. We parked near the office. The wind rustled through the trees. No birds sang, no insects chirped, nothing. The silence felt unnatural. Inside the abandoned office, dust covered everything. Old papers littered the floor. Broken furniture lay scattered around. And near the back wall, we found something unexpected. A corkboard, covered with photographs, hundreds of them. Most had faded with age, but some remained visible. Travelers, families, road trips, motel parking lots, random snapshots from across the country. The more we looked, the stranger it became, because many photographs showed the same thing. A man standing in the background, far away, watching. Sometimes beside a vending machine, sometimes near a stairwell, sometimes across a parking lot. Always present, always observing. The man in the coat. One photograph made my blood run cold. It showed Alyssa standing outside a motel, looking directly into the camera, and behind her, the man, smiling, only a few feet away, yet she appeared completely unaware of him. Ethan pulled another photo from the board. This one showed a family, 3 girls, a grandmother, a mother, the Texas family, the same family. The photograph had clearly been taken years before the spring break incident, long before they ever noticed him, long before they knew they were being watched. I suddenly realized something horrifying. The man didn't choose people randomly. He followed them, sometimes for years. Then we found Alyssa's notebook, hidden inside a broken desk drawer. Most pages were damaged by moisture, but several remained readable. One sentence appeared repeatedly throughout the notebook. He's never alone. The exact same conclusion we'd reached ourselves. Further into the notebook, Alyssa described something even stranger. Multiple witnesses had reported seeing groups of men near motels, men who appeared unrelated, different ages, different appearances, different vehicles, yet somehow connected, always arriving separately, always leaving separately, always gathering around the same locations, almost like members of a network or a cult. The final readable page contained an address. No explanation, no notes, just an address. Located deep within the Ozark Mountains, several miles from the nearest town. Below it, Alyssa had written 4 chilling words. This is where they meet. Ethan and I stared at the page. Neither of us spoke, because deep down we both knew what came next. We were going to that address, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't sure we would come back.
The address led deep into the Ozark Mountains, far deeper than neither Ethan or I expected. The paved roads disappeared first, then the cell signal, then any sign of civilization. By sunset, we were following a narrow gravel road that twisted through dense forest. The trees seemed endless, towering walls of darkness on both sides. The further we drove, the stronger the feeling became, that strange sensation of crossing into a place where we didn't belong. According to Alyssa's notebook, this was where they met. Who they were, we still didn't fully understand, but after everything we'd seen, we knew one thing: the man in the coat wasn't acting alone. Eventually, the road opened into a large clearing, and that's when we saw it. A lodge, not a motel, not a hotel, a massive wooden lodge hidden deep in the mountains. Its windows glowed softly in the darkness. Dozens of vehicles filled the surrounding parking area. Pickup trucks, SUVs, sedans, cars from multiple states, far more than we'd expected. Ethan immediately killed the headlights. We sat in silence, watching. People moved between the building and the parking lot. Most appeared normal,
Middle-aged men, young couples, older travelers. Nothing about them seemed unusual. Yet something felt wrong, because they all behaved similarly. Quiet, purposeful, focused, almost as if everyone already knew exactly why they were there. We parked several hundred yards away and approached through the trees. The closer we got, the clearer the voices became. Conversation, laughter, music. It sounded like some kind of social gathering, but appearances had fooled us before. Near one side of the lodge, we found a window with the curtains partially open. Carefully, we looked inside. The sight shocked us. More than 50 people filled the main hall, eating, talking, smiling, looking completely ordinary. At first glance, it resembled a family reunion or a community event. Then I saw him, standing near a fireplace, the man in the coat, instantly recognizable. The same face, the same smile, the same impossible lack of aging. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't lurking. People openly spoke with him. Some shook his hand, others nodded respectfully as they passed. The sight sent chills down my spine, because it meant something important. He wasn't an outsider, he belonged there. Then Ethan noticed someone else, across the room, near a long wooden table. A woman, dark hair, early 20s, wearing a gray jacket. For a second, neither of us moved, because we both recognized her immediately. Alyssa, or at least someone who looked exactly like Alyssa, the missing woman, the woman who supposedly disappeared. She looked healthy, calm, alive, not frightened, not restrained, just there, talking with several people. My mind struggled to process it. The police believed she vanished. Her family believed she vanished. Yet here she was, standing in the middle of a gathering, as if nothing had happened. Then something even stranger occurred. Alyssa turned her head and looked directly toward our window, toward us. For a brief second, our eyes met. Recognition flashed across her face, then fear. Not for herself, for us. Immediately, she shook her head. Once, a small movement, almost impossible to notice. A warning, leave, now. Then someone stepped between her and the window, the man in the coat. His smile slowly widened, because somehow he knew we were there. The realization hit me instantly. We hadn't discovered the gathering. They had allowed us to find it. Suddenly, lights appeared behind us, flashlights, several of them, moving through the woods, coming closer. Voices followed, multiple people, searching. Ethan grabbed my arm. We have to go. We turned and ran deeper into the forest. Branches snapped beneath our feet. Leaves exploded around us. The flashlights behind us grew brighter, closer. Someone shouted, then another voice, then another. At least 6 people were pursuing us, maybe more. We sprinted downhill through the darkness, neither of us knowing where we were going, only that stopping wasn't an option. After several terrifying minutes, we finally reached an old dirt service road. Our car sat somewhere beyond the trees, maybe, if we were lucky. Then a familiar voice echoed from the darkness behind us. Soft, calm, almost friendly. The same voice from the motel, the same voice from the phone calls, the same voice from room 216. You're getting close. The pursuit suddenly stopped. The flashlight stopped. The voices stopped. Everything stopped. As if whoever had been chasing us no longer needed to. And somehow, that terrified me far more than the chase itself.
We didn't stop running until we reached the car. Both of us were gasping for air, covered in dirt, covered in scratches. Yet somehow, neither of us felt relieved, because the people chasing us could have caught us. I knew it. Ethan knew it. The woods had been unfamiliar, the terrain rough, the darkness overwhelming. Yet the pursuit had simply stopped, as if someone ordered it to stop. Or worse, as if they wanted us to escape. That possibility haunted me all night.
We drove until sunrise before stopping at a roadside diner several counties away. Neither of us slept. Neither of us could. The image of Alyssa remained burned into my mind. She was alive. At least she had been the night before. But why? Why fake a disappearance? Why stay with those people? And why warn us? While Ethan ordered coffee, I reviewed photos we'd secretly taken through the lodge window. Most were blurry, dark, useless. Then, I noticed something. One image captured Alyssa standing near the fireplace. Behind her hung a large wooden map of the United States, covered with colored pins, hundreds of them. The photo wasn't clear enough to read details, but one thing stood out. Almost every pin appeared near major highways, and many sat directly on top of motel locations. The realization sent chills through me. Those motels weren't random. They were connected, part of something larger. That afternoon, an email arrived from an anonymous sender. No name, no message, only a single attachment, a video file. My pulse immediately quickened. Ethan and I exchanged a glance before opening it. The video lasted less than 2 minutes. At first, the screen showed only darkness. Then, a flashlight beam illuminated a familiar face, Alyssa. She looked exhausted, terrified. Unlike the woman we'd seen inside the lodge, this version of Alyssa looked like someone trapped, someone running out of time. She spoke directly to the camera. "If you're watching this, it means they found me." My stomach tightened. Alyssa continued, "The disappearances are real. The motels are real. The men are real." Every word felt heavier than the last. Then she revealed something unexpected. The people weren't kidnapping strangers at random. They were recruiting, watching, studying, selecting, years before approaching anyone. The man in the coat was only the beginning. A scout, a tracker, someone who identified potential targets, people who traveled alone, people disconnected from family, people constantly moving between places, people who could disappear without attracting immediate attention. The exact kind of travelers found in roadside motels. Alyssa's voice trembled. "They don't force everyone." That statement stunned us. "They convince some." The room fell silent because suddenly her presence at the lodge made sense. What if she hadn't stayed because she was imprisoned? What if she'd stayed because she'd gotten too close, too involved, too deep to leave? Then, Alyssa said something that changed everything. "There are 2 groups." I paused the video, rewound it, played it again. The words were clear. 2 groups, not one. Alyssa explained that the network operating around the motels wasn't unified. There was a split, a conflict. One faction actively recruited people. The other tried to stop them. That's when another realization hit me. The hooded woman, the warnings, the phone calls telling us to leave, the mysterious messages. Maybe she wasn't working with them. Maybe she was fighting them. Alyssa confirmed it moments later. The woman in the hood saved my life. My heart skipped a beat. For the first time, someone finally acknowledged her existence. According to Alyssa, the hooded woman had once belonged to the network years earlier, before turning against them. Now she spent her life warning travelers, helping people escape, destroying recruitment attempts whenever possible. But the most shocking revelation came at the very end. Alyssa stared directly into the camera, then whispered, "The man in the coat isn't the leader." I felt cold instantly, because if he wasn't the leader, then who was? Alyssa leaned closer, her expression filled with fear. Not fear of the man, fear of someone else, someone worse. Then the video abruptly ended. No explanation, no name, nothing. Just a black screen. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message appeared. Only one sentence.
she didn't tell you about the motel in Pennsylvania. Neither of us had ever mentioned Pennsylvania, and yet somehow, whoever sent the message knew exactly what we had just watched.
Neither Ethan nor I spoke for several minutes after reading the text. Pennsylvania. It wasn't mentioned in Alyssa's notebook. It wasn't part of any police report we'd found, and it definitely wasn't in the video. Yet someone clearly wanted us to know about it, or wanted us to go there. The question was, why? The text contained an address, nothing else. No motel name, no explanation, just a location hidden deep within rural Pennsylvania, the same state where, months earlier, my entire nightmare had begun. That coincidence felt impossible. 3 days later, we arrived. The motel sat off an isolated stretch of highway surrounded by dense forest. At first glance, it looked abandoned. The parking lot contained only 2 vehicles. Most windows were dark. Several rooms appeared permanently closed. A faded sign hung near the road. The letters had almost completely peeled away. Only fragments remained visible. The place looked forgotten. The moment I stepped from the car, a terrible feeling settled over me. Not fear, recognition, as if I'd somehow been there before. Ethan felt it too. Neither of us could explain it. Inside the office, an elderly woman sat behind the desk reading a book. The second she saw us, she froze. Not surprised, not confused, almost disappointed, like she'd been hoping we wouldn't come. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. No greeting, no welcome, just that. The statement immediately sent chills through me. I asked about the motel, the disappearances, the man in the coat. The woman's expression changed, very slowly. Then she stood and walked toward a locked cabinet behind the counter. From inside, she removed an old photograph. The picture appeared decades old, faded, damaged, yellowed with age. But the image itself hit me like a punch. The man in the coat stood in the center, exactly the same. Not younger, not older, exactly the same. Around him stood several others, men, women, teenagers, some smiling, some serious, all staring directly into the camera. The elderly woman pointed toward one face near the edge of the photograph, a young woman wearing a dark hood. My pulse jumped. The hooded woman, much younger, but unmistakably her. Then the elderly woman pointed toward another person, a tall figure standing behind everyone else, partially obscured, only half the face visible. Yet the effect was immediate. The room suddenly felt colder. I couldn't explain why. Something about that person felt wrong, even through an old photograph. "Who is that?" Ethan asked. The woman slowly sat back down, then answered, "The founder." The word echoed in my mind. Founder, not leader, founder, meaning this entire network had existed far longer than we realized. The woman explained that decades earlier, a small group of travelers began gathering near remote motels throughout the country. At first, it was harmless, people helping each other, sharing information, building connections. Then, something changed. A new figure emerged, charismatic, intelligent, dangerously persuasive. Someone capable of convincing people to abandon their old lives, leave behind their identities, disappear willingly. Over time, the group grew, expanded, spread across multiple states. Eventually, the group split. One side remained loyal to the founder, the other resisted. That division continued to this day. The hooded woman belonged to the resistance. The man in the coat belonged to the founder. The woman paused, then looked directly at me. "You've met both sides."
I nodded slowly, then asked the question that had haunted me for months. What does the founder want? For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she quietly replied, "Followers." The answer sounded simple, too simple, until she explained further. The founder believed modern society was broken, corrupt, disposable. He offered people an alternative, a hidden life, a new identity, a new purpose. Some accepted willingly, others disappeared before they could refuse. The woman suddenly stood again, then handed me a small notebook. The cover was worn and damaged. Inside, the first page appeared a handwritten name, Alyssa Walker. My heart stopped. "This belonged to her," the woman said. "Where is she now?" The elderly woman hesitated, then looked toward the forest outside. "I don't know." For the first time, I believed her. Then she added one final sentence, a sentence that changed everything. "She's looking for him." Looking for who? The woman pointed to the figure hidden in the old photograph, the founder, the true leader, the person nobody seemed to be able to find. Then she whispered, "Because he's looking for you." That night, Ethan and I opened Alyssa's notebook. Most pages contained names, dates, locations, investigations. But near the back, we found something different. A hand-drawn map, marked with a large red circle, deep within the Appalachian Mountains. Beside it, Alyssa had written 6 chilling words: "The last meeting before everything changes." And for the first time since this story began, I felt like we were finally approaching the end.
3 weeks later, Ethan and I stood deep within the Appalachian Mountains. The location from Alyssa's notebook had led us there. Far from highways, far from towns, far from anyone who could help if something went wrong. A narrow dirt road wound through endless forest before finally opening into a massive clearing. And there it was, the final gathering. Larger than the lodge in Missouri, larger than anything we'd encountered before. Hundreds of vehicles filled the area. People moved between tents, cabins, and campfires scattered across the mountainside. From a distance, it resembled a festival, a retreat, a community event. But we knew better. This was the center, the place where all the roads seemed to lead. Virginia, Oklahoma, Missouri, Pennsylvania. Every clue, every motel, every warning, every disappearance, all of it had pointed here. For hours, Ethan and I watched from the trees. People arrived continuously, families, couples, travelers. Some looked excited, others nervous. Many wore expressions I couldn't understand. Then I saw her, Alyssa, walking through the crowd, alive, free, and clearly searching for someone. Not hiding, not trapped, searching. A few minutes later, another figure appeared beside her, the hooded woman. For the first time, the two stood together, not enemies, not strangers, allies. The realization answered years of questions. Alyssa had never stopped investigating. She'd gone underground, working with the resistance, trying to expose the network from within. Suddenly, movement spread through the gathering. Conversations stopped. People began turning toward a wooden stage near the center of the clearing. The crowd parted, and the man in the coat appeared. The same face, the same smile, the impossible appearance. Yet something felt different. For the first time, he wasn't leading, he was waiting. Then another person stepped onto the stage, and every sound disappeared. Hundreds of people fell silent instantly. The founder had arrived. At first, I couldn't understand why everyone seemed so affected. The person looked ordinary,
No dramatic entrance, no intimidating appearance, no obvious power. Just a middle-aged man wearing simple clothes. Yet the atmosphere changed the moment he appeared. People watched him the way believers watch a prophet, the way followers watch someone they've devoted their lives to. Even from a distance, his presence felt unsettling. Not because he looked dangerous, because he looked convincing. The kind of person who could make almost anything sound reasonable. The founder began speaking. We couldn't hear every word, but we heard enough. He spoke about freedom, purpose, belonging, starting over, building something beyond ordinary society. The crowd listened carefully. Some nodded, some cried, some smiled. And suddenly I understood how people disappeared. Not always through force, sometimes through persuasion, sometimes through loneliness, sometimes because someone offered them exactly what they were searching for. Then everything changed. Alyssa stepped onto the stage. The founder stopped speaking. The crowd murmured. The hooded woman appeared beside her. Then another person. Then another. More members of the resistance emerged from the crowd. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire gathering seemed frozen. Then Alyssa raised a small device, a projector. A massive screen behind the stage flickered to life. Videos appeared. Records, names, evidence. Years of investigations, years of disappearances, years of recruitment operations hidden behind the network's public image. The crowd watched in stunned silence. The founder's expression finally changed. For the first time, he looked worried. The truth was spreading, not through rumors, not through warnings, through proof. People began arguing, shouting, demanding answers. Some walked away immediately, others remained. The gathering fractured. The same split that had existed for decades finally became visible to everyone. Chaos erupted, but not violence. Truth, questions, doubt, the very things the founder had spent years controlling. As confusion spread through the crowd, Alyssa looked toward the tree line, toward us, and smiled. Not because the fight was over, because it had finally become public. The secrets were no longer hidden inside forgotten motels and roadside encounters. The story was finally out. By sunrise, people were leaving. Hundreds of vehicles disappeared down mountain roads. Some followers remained loyal, others didn't. But the network would never be the same. The founder vanished before authorities could locate him. The man in the coat disappeared as well. Neither was ever officially identified. And to this day, reports still surface from time to time. Travelers staying at remote motels, people noticing strangers watching from parking lots, late-night phone calls from unknown numbers, a familiar man wearing a long dark coat, always smiling, always observing. Maybe the story ended that morning in the mountains, or maybe it didn't. Because every now and then, when I'm driving late at night and pass a nearly empty roadside motel, I still find myself checking the windows, just in case someone is standing there, watching, waiting, and smiling.
This video is over, but the story isn't, because Nahid Hassan was never found. And if your phone turns on by itself tonight, just know you've been chosen. Subscribe to Nightfall Horrors 002, because you're not safe anymore.